What's up, friends? Before we hop into the show, I got to tell you about Chevalier Mortgage. Mike and Virginia Chevalier are not only diehard Broncos fans and proud CSU alums, but they have supported DNVR for a long time as DNVR members. They're part of the family. They're a husband-wife team with over 15 years of financial services experiences. Visit them at dnvrmortgage.com and enter for a chance to win a free DNVR shirt or hat of your choice when you do. And most importantly, get set up with the free consultation to discuss all of your options. That's dnvrmortgage.com. And since your home is likely to be one of your largest assets and your mortgage, your largest debt, they believe it is vital to consider your full financial picture when purchasing a home. This includes considering your short-term and long-term planning goals, your investments, and your tax situation. Mike and Virginia will work tirelessly to find the best loan for your situation. So make sure to check them out at dnvrmortgage.com and enter to win a free DNVR shirt or hat when you do. And most importantly, get set up with that free consultation to discuss all of your options. Mike and Virginia will treat you like family. And give Virginia a call directly at 303-257-6578. Visit them at dnvrmortgage.com. Michael Chevalier, NMLS 1931006. Virginia Chevalier, NMLS 1910631.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. Two goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. Three for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number four, we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a break, brew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
Welcome into the DNVR Broncos podcast on this wonderful Wednesday. I'm your host, Zach Stevens, joined by my main man, Andrew Mason. And before we hop into the show, guys, got to tell you about our presenting sponsor, MSU Denver Online. Mace, with the spring semester right around the corner, what are you going to do differently with your life come just a few weeks from now? Well, we have a few suggestions. Our friends at MSU Denver have some great options for you. And time again, the one thing that will protect you against economic downturn is an education, which allows you to adapt into varying careers. And you can build that toolbox you need at MSU Denver. One of the great things that they do is they not only give you fantastic classes, teach you what you need to know for once you graduate, but they also do it on your schedule. So go check them out and build your schedule over at msudenver.edu/online. My boy, Mace, what's going on? How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing all right, better than the state of Colorado, although I've been thinking a lot about this. Of course, this week in Colorado, we have a new color-coded dial to determine the level of trouble that we're at various counties here in the state of Colorado. So as bad as things are for orange, it's worse to be purple. So unfortunately, the state is making a poor comment on the Rockies and still saying the Broncos aren't as bad as they could be, even though they're 3-6 4 years in a row.
Yeah, and red for the Chiefs is what Denver is about to enter into, and that's bad as well. So you're right. Orange isn't as bad as red, Mace.
If maybe the Nuggets should then rethink this whole red alternate jersey thing that it looks like they're unveiling here today.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Man, a lot of new jerseys. I mean, this is you and RK's time to be alive this week with jerseys in Colorado.
I feel like that should be a podcast here. I mean, I've got some strong opinions about the Nord-Alanche jersey that is out. I mean, I love the look, but man, if I were in Quebec, I'd be angry, man. It would hurt. It would hurt me a little seeing that igloo in Avs colors with Avs burgundy. At least out in Carolina, they're wearing the Hartford Whalers uniform, but they're not wearing it in red and black. You know,
right.
That's what this is like. I mean, that was so. Yeah, if I were a Quebec fan, I'd be a little steamed at this. And by the way, the only Avs Nordiques jersey that I own is actually an old Quebec jersey that's a white home, the white home one that they wore. So,
Wow. That's pretty legit, Mace. That is pretty cool.
Always liked the logo. Even though I wasn't a fan, I always liked the Igloo logo.
Well, unfortunately for you, there's you don't really like the Broncos jerseys with the swoosh that they have going on. There's no Broncos uniform change today. Yeah, given the disgusted look. But Mace, there may be a bigger change on the way. It very much looks like Brett Rypien has a chance to play this week. Yesterday, news comes out that Drew Lock has a pretty severe strain and bruising, although no fractured ribs. Pretty severe strain and bruising around his ribs, Mace, which definitely puts his status for Sunday's game in jeopardy. We talked about it yesterday and what it means, how the Broncos should handle Drew. And we pretty much said, if he's not, if there's a chance that this injury could be re-aggravated, then you don't play him this week. You let him get healthy. However, if he is healthy, you do play him. You don't just bench him. Well, Mace, if he's not healthy, the Broncos will turn to an undefeated quarterback, a 1-0 Brett Rypien.
Yeah, the team is undefeated. And of course, Brett Rypien had the good fortune of looking across the line of scrimmage and seeing the New York Jets in his only start. So would we be talking about Brett Rypien with the adjective undefeated if the Broncos had gone against anybody else on the schedule that week?
No one. Brett played a really good game until the fourth quarter. It's kind of the opposite of what Drew's done for 2 of the past 3 weeks. Brett was 2 touchdowns, no interceptions going into that fourth quarter. What looked very much in control, looked very comfortable in the NFL, despite it being his first start in the NFL. And then that third quarter came and it was rough. What was it? 3 interceptions in the third quarter or in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, he had 3 interceptions for the game for the game here. Looking back at it, yeah.
It was 2 in the fourth quarter. Yeah.
Right, because he had an interception in the second quarter and then 2 in the fourth on back-to-back possessions.
Right, exactly. So on the game, Brett went 19 of 31. So 61% completion. You'll take that any day. 242 yards. You'll take that any day from a backup. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception going into the fourth. And then in the fourth, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, one of them being a pick 6. But you know what? The Broncos held on, and the Broncos made it look like an easy win when Melvin Gordon took that about 50 yards into the end zone right before the game ended. So the Broncos won by 9 points. It was an easy win.
Easy is not how I would describe that game. And also, Melvin Gordon had the clinching run, but what I also recall is the defense really stiffening over the course of that game to where after Sam Darnold's gallop through the secondary, all they allowed were field goals after that. And so, again, it's the New York Jets. By the way, the Jets, Zach, they have 7 interceptions all season, and 3 of them came against Brett Rypien, a very similar tale to the Raiders who had as many interceptions Sunday as they had in the previous 14 regular season games going back to last year.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mace, the Broncos are facing a different type of team this week where they're not the New York Jets. The Miami Dolphins, Mace, are what the Denver Broncos want to be. They have a top 5 defense led by a defensive-minded head coach, and that defensive-minded head coach, Brian Flores, has the Dolphins fiery on defense to start this season. And so, Mace, there's a lot of talk out there, especially on Twitter. The people that are done with Drew Lock are very much welcoming this opportunity for Brett Rypien to play because they liked what they saw in that first game. And also what they liked what they saw the drive before that game, where, of course, he came in relief against the Tampa Bay Bucks when Jeff Driscoll was clearly not the guy. Went in, moved the ball downfield. No, he ended with an interception. But people liked what they saw there. They liked what they saw against the Jets. They point to the 1-0 undefeated and say, let's just see if Brett Rypien is the guy. We touched on this yesterday, that I think the coaching staff has really told us exactly how they view Brett Rypien, and that, like you said, Mace, yesterday, when the Broncos turned to Jeff Driscoll, the Broncos said, we need a backup. We're going to bring in Blake Bortles to be the backup. Now, Brett Rypien got his shot and took that, so good for him. So we kind of know what the coaching staff thinks, but Mace, is there any credence to Brett Rypien being the guy and needing that shot?
No. No, I'm sorry. And I noted this in my piece late yesterday afternoon, that the season is still about Drew Lock, and it's still about finding out what he has. And if you do have a risk of re-injury for him in terms of this rib strain that he's got, then you should sit him out. But if you sit him out, it's with the intention of him going back in as soon as possible, which ideally would be 1 week, and then he's healthy and good to go for the stretch run. The thing with Brett Rypien is, first of all, let's just rewind the clock back to August, early September. If the Broncos were that enamored with Brett Rypien, they would have kept him on the 53-man roster, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
If they were enamored with Brett Rypien, would they have signed Jeff Driscoll? Would they have kept Jeff Driscoll as the quarterback ahead of him?
Nope.
Okay. And then going further down the line, if they thought Brett Rypien could step in for Jeff Driscoll, would they have added Blake Bortles?
Certainly not.
Right. Now, I think Rypien did surprise some people in the building with how composed he was. And certainly in the just over a game of work we've seen from Brett Rypien, he maximizes his strengths very well. He is a cerebral quarterback. He's very good at diagnosing the intent of the defense. The thing that he did that impressed me was he did frankly a better job than we've seen of Drew Lock, especially in the last few games, of getting the offensive line in the right protection pre-snap, which helps him have time to throw. But at the same time, the interceptions, for example, some ill-advised throws, and also with the bad throws that he did have against the Jets, it's just not enough on the ball. There's not enough arm talent there. If he isn't completely accurate, if he's just a little bit late with the ball, the defense is going to be able to jump it. And it's one reason why we saw him rack up 4 picks there in just over a game worth of work. So I think the end sum of Brett Rypien is he can become a solid backup, but this is not somebody that you see as a long-term starter.
Yeah,
and
I think
Drew Lock could still be that. So that's why if he's out there, it's a temp job. Drew Lock gets back in as soon as his health allows.
Yeah, Mace, I think Brett is playing for something this week if he does play, and that's to prove that he's the backup, because
Right.
I really liked what I saw from him in those first 3 quarters of the game. And you know what? He had that silly interception where he was trying to throw the ball away, and he just didn't successfully throw the ball away. It was a really poor decision, an easy one to correct. You don't imagine that that's going to happen every single week. So going into the fourth quarter, 2 touchdowns to 1 pick, I really like the command that Brett Rypien had. But, Mace, like you said, 4 interceptions in just over 4 quarters of play is unacceptable. I mean, we just saw it with Drew, 4 interceptions in a game. Unacceptable. No matter who you are, you can't do that. And so I'm not 100% comfortable about Brett Rypien being the backup for the long term, like signing him up to a new deal, cutting Jeff Driscoll after this year, and making sure that Brett Rypien's your backup for the next 5 years. So this would be that's what this game would be. Show us that you can come in when we need you, off a whim, and play and control the game. And what's a realistic expectation to win 40% of the games? I mean, if you can keep the team in half the games and almost get those wins, then that's kind of a realistic expectation for a backup. And so that's what we need to see from Jeff this week. He's not fighting for the job, for the starting job this year, for the starting job next year. He's fighting to be the backup.
Was that Freudian slip there, Zach? I heard you say Jeff.
Ah, yes, that was. Jeff would be the backup this week in this case.
Yes, he would. Now, I think the interesting thing, everything you said is spot on. He's playing to potentially be the backup, and I would argue this: Jeff Driscoll. I think the boat has kind of sailed, and if he is the Broncos' backup quarterback next year, something went wrong. I would offer this on Brett Rypien. He is playing to keep the Broncos from re-signing Blake Bortles right after the season and projecting Blake Bortles as the backup quarterback for next year. At minimum. I think obviously the scenario could change. We could be talking about someone else coming in as a hedge for Drew Lock if the Broncos want to run Drew Lock back and see if a full off season can't help him. The other interesting thing about this game with Brett Rypien, Zach, compared to the last one, the Jets had one possession of film and a short week, no practices because that was a Thursday night game. Now you have a scenario where the Dolphins have a full week of practice. The Dolphins do have film on Brett Rypien, a game's worth from that Jets encounter. So they're going to be able to prepare for Brett Rypien's strengths and weaknesses in a way that perhaps the Jets couldn't. So this is a fascinating moment because you have that on that side, and then on the other side, the Broncos have maybe a better idea of what Brett Rypien can and can't do. You talk about the interception when he's trying to throw the ball away. I mean, that's unfortunately, Zach, that's reminiscent of your boy Trevor Siemian back in 2017 against the Bills. And what those plays have in talent or have in common is an inability to have enough arm talent to put enough on the ball to get that thing out of bounds. And that, because that's something that if you've got a sufficient NFL arm, you never miss on a throwaway. You just get it out of bounds, go on to the next play.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And also, a lot of people say Brett Rypien could have had 4 picks if Jerry Jeudy didn't moss the Jets going into the end zone because that ball was underthrown. Yeah. There's limitations. And we get a comment here from Roussel who says, are we confident Pat Shurmur can create a game plan for him? And here's what I'll say. I liked the game plan that Pat Shurmur created for Brett Rypien. It was very quick. It was get the ball out quick, and that was something that Brett Rypien could do. In fact, I love the way Brett Rypien was diagnosing the defense at the line, really doing something that we haven't seen much in the past few years in Denver. And then it is about getting the ball out quick. It's a totally different game plan than when you have Drew Lock. You do not want him holding on to the ball. He is a guy that can stay in the pocket, whereas Drew, what have we been preaching? Get him outside. Get him on the move. That's what he wants to do. You have to do that. Brett Rypien, no. Just have him catch it and throw it. Catch the snap, throw it. That's what this should be, a very quick game plan. Now, Mace, let's say Brett Rypien plays really well, though. And let me give you a few scenarios in terms of statistics on how Brett does. And tell me what the Broncos do. Because the good thing about this Drew Lock injury, if he misses this weekend's game, there's a chance he doesn't miss this game. And then we're talking about Brett Rypien being the backup again for this Sunday. But if he misses this game, the good thing about Drew's injury is that it probably should only be a 1-game injury. He should probably back the following week against the Saints when the Broncos likely play a backup quarterback in Jameis Winston. So let's say Brett Rypien goes out, Mace, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 60% completion, 200 yards, and the Broncos keep it within 1 score but lose. What are you doing the following week at quarterback?
I'm starting Drew Lock.
Easy. Yep. Yeah. I totally agree. All right. Let's make the stakes a little tougher here. Let's say 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. The Broncos lose by 1 and score in the high 20s. What do you do in the following week?
I'm starting Drew Lock because I think short of Brett Rypien being damn near perfect, the thing is, if you start Brett Rypien over a healthy Drew Lock, you're almost certainly saying that's it for Drew Lock.
Yep, you would be.
Yeah, and the whole point of this exercise now that you're sitting at 3-6 and you're almost certainly out of the playoff picture here, barring a miracle of not only the Broncos going 7-0 or 6-1, but other things falling their way among the other teams in contention. it's about finding out if Drew Lock can be the guy, and that means giving him every snap possible. If Brett Rypien stays on the job and Drew Lock is healthy, then you know what? Then the Broncos organization has made the call on Drew Lock. And I know people are going to say, well, back in 1983, John Elway was on the bench and then he came back in. It's a different scenario. You're not talking about benching Drew Lock for a guy who is a veteran quarterback who's already got some experience. And oh, by the way, that team in Denver in 1983, even though the year before they were 2-7 in that weird strike year, it was a team that in full seasons was used to being a playoff contender. So there was a bit more urgency in the moment for Dan Reeves and the Broncos in 1983, and they had a reasonably proven veteran option in Steve DeBerg, who I believe at that point was in his 6th or 7th NFL season by then. This isn't Brett Rypien. Brett Rypien is not Steve DeBerg. Now, maybe someday he becomes Steve DeBerg, but he's not Steve DeBerg in 1983. So I'm just kind of anticipating what some are going to say here. And because with Drew Lock, when he struggles, and I've heard it and you've heard it on social media, people saying, what about John Elway? John Elway was this as a rookie. John Elway was this in his first few starts. Blah, 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 blah.
Peyton Manning.
Peyton also threw 26 touchdowns in his rookie season.
Right. It's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mace? It's very different.
Today, Zach, if Peyton Manning were a rookie and having and playing at the level that he did as a rookie, his rookie season would probably be a couple more touchdowns based on just how the standards have changed. He'd probably be talking about throwing 2 to 4 more touchdowns, so 28 to 30 touchdowns. And I imagine his picks would drop from 28 to about 20.
Yeah.
If he played today.
Yeah, and then that's something you can live with a rookie because the flashes were all over the place with those type of numbers. And Mace, with Brett Rypien, you say he would need to do something incredible in order to keep the job over a healthy Drew Lock. So what are we talking about? Give me a situation where Brett Rypien does something so incredible that the Broncos say, we can't bench you even though Drew Lock is healthy.
3 touchdowns, no picks, completes over 70% of his passes, and the Broncos end up putting north of 30 points on this Miami Dolphin defense, which is something, by the way, the only 3 teams that have surpassed 21 points against the Dolphins this year are Arizona, Seattle, Buffalo. Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen. So 2 of the really outstanding young quarterbacks in this game right now, and somebody who for most of the season was playing at an MVP level before really hitting the skids a little bit in terms of Wilson having a bad game against the Rams last week. And
Mace, do the Broncos have to get the win in that scenario? Or if the defense gives up, 40, then it doesn't matter?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they have to get the win. And then in that case, if they don't win, then it matters how the points came. Because if it's more garbage time points, then yeah, okay, fine.
Right.
There's no doubt. But I mean, you're talking just a game that is I'm going to take it beyond your word because you might say magnificent. What is beyond magnificent? Transcendent?
Yes.
Okay. A transcendent performance that is, and you know what? It's one of those things where you'll know it when you see it. A transcendent performance where you say, you know what? Maybe this guy has something we don't expect. But the thing is, if you do that, you also have to think about what this is saying for Drew Lock and to Drew Lock.
Yeah. It would say it's over is what it would be saying to Drew Lock. And Mace, I agree with you, except I think a transcendent performance 95% of the time will get the win. So I do think it will, if we're talking about Brett Rypien starting another game, even though Drew Lock is healthy, I think it's the Broncos do get the win. But I agree with you, Mace. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and you lose by 7. No, it's Drew Lock the next week. If you're not scoring 30 points, have pretty much 3 touchdowns to no picks, and you're winning the game, then it's Brett Rypien. Otherwise, it's going to be Drew Lock. And Mace, there's some people. I'll let you get in here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, think about this, Zach, in terms of the possibility of playing well and not winning. The Dolphins, their last 8 games, they're averaging 30 points a game.
Yeah.
I mean, the sometimes now obviously they're getting some help with defense and special teams, but you look at the Dolphins and you look at them and you're like, wow. I mean, this has become a really good team.
Yeah.
This is a huge challenge, and this is why I think we're talking about these huge type of numbers for Brett Rypien for him to seize the job. Boy, oh boy! I mean, it would be an impressive accomplishment to win this game, unless Miami just completely falls on its face, because the form the Dolphins are showing, it's actually in some ways, Zach, it's reminding me a little bit of the Patriots in Bill Belichick's second year on the job, which is when Tom Brady went to the lineup. In terms of maybe it doesn't look elegant, but you're looking at the end results week after week, and they're delivering in every phase.
Yep, they are. The Dolphins are the 5th best scoring defense in the league right now, giving up 20 points per game. That's why it would be incredible if he dropped 30 points against this. And Mace, there's some people making the argument that, this is a perfect excuse for the Broncos to say Drew is hurt and to get a shot, to get a look at Brett Rypien and see if he's the guy. No, that is not true. That is not what they're doing, because if that's what they were doing, Mace, then they have said Drew Lock is not the guy. They have said that they are done with Drew. They don't need to see anything more than Drew. And that's not what's happened. Maybe if this was the end of the year, then I would say, okay, yeah, maybe that's what's happening. But this is not what's happening. I promise you, they are not saying that this is a perfect excuse to get Brett Rypien in there to see if he's the guy.
100%. I mean, this is still about Drew Lock. I mean, they were looking at this 4-game stretch in particular as far as getting an idea, but Lock, the plan was and remains for Lock to get as much playing time in the rest of the season as his health will allow. And that's why I do think if Lock is feeling discomfort today and tomorrow, then the best course of action is going to be to sit him, but put a time clock on it. As soon as he is ready to go, he goes back in there. And I would expect if he sits this week, he would be ready to go next week.
Yeah, I agree. Mace, did you see what Ben Roethlisberger tried to pull with Mike Tomlin earlier this week?
No, I did not.
So last week, Ben wasn't feeling well throughout the week, so he didn't play. Then on Friday, the last practice of the week, he went out there, threw 50 passes, and then, of course, lit it up this past weekend for the Pittsburgh Steelers in a win. So this week he said, hey, coach, why don't we just do the same thing? Give me a couple practices off. I'll come in Friday, light it up, and then I'll light it up again. And Mike Tomlin said, we'll see you at practice this week. And the reason I bring that story up is Drew, it doesn't seem like he's going to do that. It doesn't seem like Vic Fangio is going to take that approach where Drew either gets very limited practice or no practice and then plays. And there's a very big difference between Ben Roethlisberger and Drew Lock. Ben Roethlisberger, future Hall of Famer, so much experience. Those are guys that can do that. Those are guys that can miss nearly a full week of practice, and the coaching staff still feels comfortable having them go out there and play with barely any practice. It's not the same thing with Drew. The Vic said it pretty much on Monday. He said Drew needs to get a good week of practice in, at least a couple practices in order to play. So, Mace, if we don't see him practice this week, I do not think they say, all right, Drew, go out there and play. I think that then it's very clear it's going to be Brett.
100%. Yeah. You've got to have, in the parlance of John Fox, you got to have skins on the wall to be able to do that. Kind of like Shannon Sharp toward the end of his career, who would have weeks where he wouldn't practice Wednesday. He wouldn't practice Thursday. He'd be out there Friday, ready to go Sunday. And remember, in the 2015 season, we saw a bunch of vets on the Broncos get that kind of deal when they had some injuries. I'm not sure Owen Daniels ever actually practiced in the back half of that season. But boy, oh boy, when they really needed him in the AFC Championship game, he was Peyton's guy.
Yep, he was catching touchdowns when it mattered. And the difference between all of those guys and Drew Lock is, of course, very experienced and very good play, too, from, a lot of that defense as well. And that's something that we haven't seen from Drew, at least very recently. So it's something that, is the storyline here. And it's going to be interesting because what if Brett Rypien goes out and puts out a transcendent performance. Well, that's about all that can happen for him to keep the job. Mace, before we get out of here, gotta get your DraftKings pick of the weekend. And I'll start with mine. I'll give you mine because, Mace, I'm on a heater with my DraftKings pick of the week. I'm 5-0 in my past 5 weeks giving you my DraftKings pick of the week, and I'm going back to the winning well, and that is Alabama football. Of course, they had a bye last week, wasn't able to play LSU because of COVID, but Alabama has helped me 3 times. I'm undefeated going with them. They set the line against Kentucky at 30.5 points. Give me all 30.5 points. Give me Alabama to beat Kentucky by more than that. Kentucky's actually put up a fight in a lot of these games, but Alabama, I think they are going to want to show that they are the number 1 team in the country because they are back on top after Clemson losing. So give me Alabama 48-10 to cover that 30.5.
Wow, you know what? It's hard to go wrong betting on Alabama. That's a good call. And last week I came in ahead, but boy, I was sweating it out. Remember in the North Carolina Wake Forest game, I had Wake Forest getting the points. Yep. And of course, Wake takes a huge lead. I'm not happy for North Carolina. I'm feeling good about my pick. And then my guy, Sam Howell, number 1 overall pick in 2022, comes roaring back, and the Tar Heels take a 2-score lead, and they're up 14. I'm like, oh my gosh. But then, out of nowhere, Wake Forest, after being outscored 35-0 for a chunk of the second half, the Demon Deacons march downfield. They get a touchdown. They get the 2-point conversion. They lose by 6.
And you cover.
Important touchdown for a lot of us out there. So I was I was ecstatic. The Tar Heels won. I was happy. My daughter was happy. She was watching the game with me, and Wake Forest got the cover. But I'm going to move on to the Big Ten this week, and I'm going to take a look at Wisconsin Northwestern. Now, I mean, Northwestern, hey, off to a great start this year. They're 19th in the country. They're 4-0, had a couple of 3 tough wins the last 3 games against Iowa, Nebraska, and Purdue. Of course, they blew out Maryland to start the year, but they beat Iowa by 1. Really good game over in Iowa City. Beat Nebraska by 8. Last week, a thrilling win to take out the Purdue Boilermakers by 7. Well, now going up against Wisconsin, this is going to be a different matter entirely. Wisconsin against Illinois and against Michigan, they are smoking people. Now, Illinois, not very good. Michigan, an underachiever. But it's the way that Wisconsin is winning. Of course, they missed a couple of games because of a COVID outbreak. But boy, Graham Mertz, quarterback, freshman, he had COVID. He did not look in any way affected by it. And Graham Mertz is another guy that I think we're going to be talking about in the draft process a couple of years from now. So even though Northwestern is getting 7.5 at home, I'm taking the Badgers to cover that spread.
I love it. I love it, Mace. And hopefully you guys follow us and you're 2-0 after those bets this weekend. And before we get out of here, Mace, gotta tell our listeners about our great membership contest that we've got going on. We want to join we want you to join our family, and we want to make our family even bigger here at DNVR.com. And we would love if you signed up using the promo code Broncos, because we've got a competition going on at DNVR between each beat on who can grow our family the most. And if you use promo code Broncos to join on DNVR.com, you'll get a free t-shirt of your choice. You'll get a mask, and you'll get a sticker pack, and you'll get our excellent coverage for an entire year. You'll get to roll with us, and it really supports us do this podcast for free for you guys. So we'd really, really, really appreciate if you helped us out and use that promo code Broncos when joining. Go to thednvr.com, click on Become a Member, slam that promo code Broncos, get your free t-shirt, mask, and sticker pack, and become part of our family. And then when you do, you'll have the exclusive right to leave comments on this pod where we will read them. Go to thednvr.com, go to the podcast, and then go to the top, or go to the first podcast that is there. Go to the bottom, and that is where you will be able to leave comments for us to read on the pod. And Mace, speaking of those comments, let's jump into those comments. And for all of those of you joining us on the live podcast, thank you so much. Why don't you check us out anywhere you can find podcasts at at DNVR Broncos on podcast, so you can check us out and roll with us for the rest of the comment section. But for Andrew Mason, I'm Zach Stevens. Thanks, guys, for rolling with us today.